As days passed, Rita's excitement for her upcoming birthday grew, but there was a shadow of sadness looming over her household. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo had announced that they would be traveling for an important business trip, leaving Rita feeling disappointed. "I want both of you to be there for my prize giving day," Rita exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. Her parents tried to reassure her that they would be back in time for her birthday, but Rita remained upset. Running to her room, she shut herself away from everyone. Once upon a time, in the bustling city of Lagos, there lived a chubby 9-year-old girl named Rita. Rita was the only child of her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo, who adored her endlessly. They showered her with love and gave her everything she desired. Rita was a pampered child who never faced scolding or discipline from her parents. They were wealthy and had all they needed, including maids and domestic staff. Despite their effort to have more children, Rita remained their sole focus, leading to even more pampering. In school, Rita's classmates saw her as a spoilt child. No one dared to correct her or upset her, fearing the wrath of her parents. She was adored by her teachers and friends alike, with everyone wanting to be her friend for the benefits it brought. Sometimes, Rita invited her friends, Somi and Clara, for sleepovers at her luxurious house. Her parents spared no expense to ensure their daughter and her friends had the best time. Academically, Rita struggled. She would often doze off or eat during class, showing little interest in learning. Her parents hired an extra lesson teacher for her, but Rita still showed disrespect towards her teacher. Rita and her friends, Clara and Somi, sometimes bullied other children. When complaints reached her parents, they simply threw money at the problem to silence the accusers. One day, Rita expressed her desire for a sibling to her parents. Despite their attempts to have more children, they couldn't fulfill Rita's wish. Worried about her happiness, they decided to bring in Rita's cousin, Moyo, to live with them. Moyo was unlike Rita in every way. She was respectful, intelligent, and kind. Despite their hopes of bonding, Rita treated Moyo poorly, constantly reminding her that they weren't sisters. Mrs. Adebayo tried to reassure Moyo. "Forgive Rita, my dear. She is a younger sister to you." "But we are only 2 years apart," Moyo protested. Despite Rita's behavior, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo enrolled Moyo in the same school. They treated her with kindness and love, while Rita remained distant. In school, Rita ignored Moyo, referring to spend time with her friends. It was hard for others to believe they were cousins, except when they saw them riding in the same car home. One day, Rita demanded to be picked up separately from Moyo. When her mother refused, Rita went to her father for support, and he reluctantly agreed. Feeling hurt, Moyo threatened to return home, but Mrs. Adebayo comforted her. "Don't worry, Moyo. Rita will come around. She's just used to being an only child." Moyo tried her best to keep up with Rita's demanding attitude, but it wasn't any easy. She missed her own parents and younger brother terribly, but whenever they called her to check on her, She would put on a brave face and assure them that she was excited to bond with her cousin Rita. One evening, Moyo was relaxing in the living room with Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo watching television. When Rita stormed in, she shouted, "Move, Moyo, that's my spot," pointing to the seat next to Mrs. Adebayo. Moyo hesitated, feeling frustrated by Rita's constant demands. "But I was here first. I don't see why I have to move," she replied, trying to stand her ground. Rita scolded and reached for the remote, switching off the television. "I said move," she exclaimed, her voice sharp with annoyance. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo exchanged worry. They didn't intervene. Instead, Mrs. Adebayo sighed and pleaded with Moyo. "Please, Moyo, just this once. Let Rita have her seat." Feeling defeated, Moyo reluctantly got up and moved to another seat, her frustration simmering beneath the surface. Rita plopped down in her spot triumphantly, a small grin on her face. As the evening went on, Mrs. Adebayo suggested taking Moyo out for a special outing to make up for the incident that had happened earlier. But Rita quickly interjected, insisting that she wouldn't allow it unless she was included. Reluctantly, Moyo agreed to the outing, though she couldn't shake off the feeling of unfairness. As they went shopping, Moyo watched in disbelief as Rita ate with her mouth full and grabbed items from the shelves without a second thought. Days turned into weeks, and Rita's demanding behavior showed no sign of improvement. Moyo felt like she was walking on eggshells around her cousin, never knowing when her next outburst would come. One day, Rita excitedly reminded her parents about her upcoming 10th birthday. "Mom, Dad, my birthday is coming up soon and I want a big fancy party with lots of decoration and cakes," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo smiled indulgently at their daughter's enthusiasm. "Of course, baby, we would make sure your birthday is everything you've dreamed of," Mrs. Adebayo reassured her. Rita beamed with delight. "And we have to start planning it right away. I want the biggest party ever," she insisted. She imagined all the fun that she would have on her birthday. Her parents nodded in agreement, and Mrs. Adebayo called in all the domestic staff and maids to inform them about Rita's birthday plan. "We need to start preparations immediately. Rita's birthday party must be perfect," she instructed them. The staff nodded eagerly and set to work, eager to please the young mistress. As days passed, Rita's excitement for her upcoming birthday grew, but there was a shadow of sadness looming over her household. Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo had announced that they would be traveling for an important business trip, leaving Rita feeling disappointed. "I want both of you to be there for my prize giving day," Rita exclaimed, tears welling up in her eyes. Her parents tried to reassure her that they would be back in time for her birthday, but Rita remained upset. Running to her room, she shut herself away from everyone, refusing to answer their knocks. Desperate to make their daughter happy, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo made a difficult decision. They cancelled their trip and rescheduled it to come after Rita's birthday. sacrificing their own plans to be there for her. On the day of the prize giving ceremony, Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo dressed elegantly and set off to meet their daughter at school. But tragedy struck on their way when they were involved in a terrible accident that claimed their lives. Meanwhile, at school, Rita anxiously awaited her parents' arrival, unaware of the tragedy that had befallen them. When the school day ended, Moyo tried to comfort Rita, but Rita's mind was consumed with worry. As they arrived home, they were greeted by a somber atmosphere and the presence of many unfamiliar faces. Moyo's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Adeleke, were there, and Rita and Moyo hugged them tightly, confused by the sadness in the air. It was then that the heartbreaking truth was revealed. Rita's parents had been killed in a car accident. Shocked and devastated, Rita collapsed, unable to comprehend the sudden loss of her beloved parents. In the weeks that followed, Rita struggled to come to terms with her grief. Moyo and her parents did their best to comfort her, but nothing could ease the pain of losing her parents. Eventually, Mr. and Mrs. Adeleke made the difficult decision to take Rita and Moyo with them. Despite Rita's reluctance, they insisted that she couldn't stay alone in the Adebayo's mansion. With heavy hearts, Rita and Moyo packed their belongings and said goodbye to the home they knew. The domestic staff and maid were relieved of their duties, and with tears in their eyes, they bid farewell to the girls. After arriving at the Adeleke's house, Moyo was overjoyed to see her younger brother waiting for her. But for Rita, the new environment felt strange and uncomfortable. She longed for the familiarity of her old home and her parents' presence. That night, Rita asked Mr. and Mrs. Adeleke for her own special room, but they gently explained that she would be sharing a room with Moyo. Rita protested and cried, feeling frustrated by the sudden change, but there was no one to indulge her tantrums. Moyo reminded Rita that she needed to act her age and adapt to the new situation. The Adeleke's household was different from what Rita was used to. There were rules to follow, such as no excessive eating, no staying up late, and no bringing of friends over unnecessarily. Rita found it difficult to adjust to these new expectations. Rita was consumed with guilt over the loss of her parents. She blamed herself for insisting that they attend her prize giving day, believing that if she hadn't, they might still be alive. Her grief weighed heavily on her heart, and she cried herself to sleep every night. In the Adeleke's house, Rita's rude attitude was not tolerated. She was scolded when she did something wrong and treated equally with Moyo and her brother Femi. Despite her initial resistance, Rita gradually began to realize that the Adelekes were treating her with love and fairness, even though she still had much to learn about respecting others. At school, Rita noticed a change in her friends Clara and Somi. They began to withdraw from her, no longer interested in her company now that she no longer brought excessive food and money to school. Rita tried to regain their friendship, but they rejected her, cruelly calling her fat and eventually cutting ties with her altogether. Feeling alone and abandoned, Rita realized that the favors she received from her classmates were solely due to her father's wealth. She cried bitterly, mourning the loss of her friends and the privileged life she once led. As Rita settled into her new life with the Adelekes, she realized that she needed to make some changes. She started asking Moyo to teach her some things, and both Moyo and Femi were welcoming. They treated Rita like a sister, helping her adjust and showing her kindness. Rita began to confide in Moyo, sharing her thoughts and dreams with her. One day, Rita expressed her interest in joining a gym on weekends, and Moyo was excited about the idea. They told Mr. and Mrs. Adeleke, who agreed without hesitation. Every weekend, Moyo and Rita would head to the gym together, working out and bonding over their shared goals. At school, Moyo and Rita grew even closer, no longer just cousins, but sisters. Moyo stood up for Rita and supported her in every way possible. Rita's academic performance improved, and her former friends, Clara and Somi, became very jealous. They wanted to be close to her again, but Rita knew their true intentions and kept her distance. After months of hard work, Rita started to get in shape, fulfilling her promise to make her parents proud wherever they were. She bonded with her siblings Moyo and Femi, becoming respectful, helpful and attentive. As Rita's 11th birthday approached, Mr. and Mrs. Adeleke threw her a surprise party. Rita was excited, though she felt a twinge of sadness knowing her parents weren't there to celebrate with her. But she was grateful for her new family and the love they showed her. Over the years, Rita gradually healed from the pain of losing her parents. With the support of the Adelekes, she found happiness and fulfillment in her new life. Despite the fact that she wasn't their biological daughter, the bond between Rita and the Adelekes was so strong that no one could tell the difference. Rita became humble and learned many valuable lessons along the way. When Moyo gained admission to the university, Rita was there to cheer her on. And a year later, Rita followed suit, joining Moyo at the university to pursue her own dreams. The Adelekes were overjoyed to see their daughters excel and thrive. Together, they lived happily as a family, grateful for the love and support they shared. And though Rita's journey had been filled with challenges, she had found her place in the world, surrounded by the people who truly loved her. The story of Rita teaches us that family is defined by love and support rather than just blood. Adversity can lead to growth, and kindness and compassion are essential in building strong relationships. Hard work and perseverance pay off at all times, and gratitude and humility are important virtues in appreciating life's blessing. Finally, Rita's journey highlights the power of love, resilience, and the importance of family bonds in overcoming challenges and finding happiness. Thanks for watching this captivating story on African stories and folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories. Thank you.